In education, there tends to be a lot of information floating around that is supposed to help educators. However, some of this information is a myth that tends to persist over time. Today we're going to look at one myth in education and talk about what is accurate about it, why this myth seems to persist, and what teachers can do instead. This myth is that students learn best when the teaching matches their specific learning style. We've all heard of different types of learning style, and this myth says that students will learn best based on their specific style. When we think about different types of learners, we commonly think of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners. Visual learners tend to be the students who are really good at drawing or prefer watching a movie over a lecture. Auditory learners are the ones that we tend to think of as being really good at listening to oral instructions, or they might tend to learn best by reciting it, or they're just our really talkative students. The third type of learner that this myth discusses is the kinesthetic learners. These are the students who are always moving. Sometimes in class it seems like they can't sit still, or they perform best when doing hands-on activities. The kinesthetic learners might even be the students who appear to always do well in sports. While we do have different types of students, we can't break them down into these different types of learners. While students might have a preference as to their specific style, there is little evidence to support that teaching to their specific style is actually better than any other type of teaching method. This myth states that for visual learners, we should focus on showing them movies or showing them pictures or having them draw pictures to help learn material. The myth says that for auditory learners, we should have them recite information or we should have them listen to it on repeat. And the myth also says that for kinesthetic learners, we should have them get up and actually act out what they're learning. If we think about why we have this myth, part of it is because varied instruction does work. When we change what we do in our classroom, we tend to see better results. However, this isn't because we are teaching to one style of learner. It has more to do with the different types of format, keep students engaged, and tends to help the information sink in. We also have this myth because if you look at your roster of students, we all can see that we do have different types of students. However, there's little evidence to support that they have a specific type of learning style. The third reason we have this myth is because a lot of online information and research supports it. In the article, Why Urban Myths Are So Persistent, they discuss that if you search 100 professional research papers, over 90% of them tend to support this myth. Based on this myth, it says that teachers should vary types of instruction that are used. This information is accurate. However, this myth also implies that teachers should create multiple lessons for the same topic for different types of learners. However, this isn't something that we should be focusing our time on. Thinking that you should have to make a lesson in 3 different formats for your 3 different types of learners just isn't applicable. Instead, what teachers should be doing is based on current cognitive psychology research. Instead of focusing lessons on 3 different types of learners, teachers should continue to vary their instruction by using some different techniques. One technique is using self-explanation or having students actually explain the material. This could be utilized in a think, pair, share, where students have to turn and talk to a partner to explain the concept that they just learned. Another method is by creating a summary of the information they just learned. This technique works because students have to identify the important concepts and then explain how they relate to each other. A third method is through highlighting, And this is really effective because it forces students to pick out the important information and to realize what makes it important. A fourth type of teaching method is imagery use to help explain text. So as students are learning text or different concepts, they should be thinking of images that will help them recall the information later. And a final practice is that students can utilize practice testing. As Carey states in his book, when students recall information, they are more likely to remember it in the future. Hopefully this video helped explain why this myth is wrong and why we shouldn't be teaching towards learning styles, but why we should continue to vary our instruction in support of cognitive psychology.